pick up where the last video left off, I want to point out that the main pancreatic duct as well as the common bile duct mix their different fluids together in the hepatopancreatic ampulla, which is a little bit difficult to see, but we know that right here at this junction between the two vessels, this is where we would get the mixing of the bile and the pancreatic juices. Okay. Ultimately, these different substances are deposited into the duodenum via this green dot right here. This is actually the opening of the ampulla into the duodenal lumen, and this is called the major duodenal papilla, and it's a papilla because it kind of juts out into the duodenum just a little bit. Okay, so food is going to flow through the duodenum, and it is ultimately going to be moved along via peristalsis and segmentation into the jejunum, and then finally to the ileum. Now, in order to see where the food is going to flow next, I'm going to remove the intestines for now and point out that this here is the very end of the small intestine. So this is the end of the ileum, and this is where food, in this case, very much digested food, is going to be passed ultimately into the large intestine. Now, we only want substances to flow in this direction from small into large intestine and never in reverse. And so we have a structure that assures the unidirectional flow, this essentially like triangular structure right here. This is called the ileocecal valve. Valves assure unidirectional flow, and this prevents backflow from the cecum into the ileum. Okay. On that note, we see that the large intestine essentially ascends here, but before it does that, there is this little blind-ended outpocketing that's actually inferior to the ileocecal valve. This structure is called the cecum. It's essentially a hotel for the gut flora, so we really want to cultivate those gut flora to help us with our intestinal health as well as the creation of vitamins, etc. Okay. Off the end of the cecum is yet another structure right here. This is called the vermiform appendix. Okay, so bacteria from the cecum is going to mix with this very much digested food coming in from the ileum, and it is going to be propelled upward in the first section of the large intestine. Okay, let's bring back the rest of the intestines now. Okay, so here is the first portion of the large intestine. This is called the ascending colon. It crosses over and all the way to the left side. This is the transverse colon because it travels in a transverse direction. All right, next, it's going to wrap around, and the food is then going to descend, or in this case, the waste, the feces, is going to descend in the descending colon all the way to the left side of the abdominopelvic cavity. Then, remove these one more time. In order to actually eject the waste via defecation, the large intestine, of course, has to get to the medial part of the body. And so this kind of curved structure of the large intestine is called the sigmoid colon. It's kind of S in shape. Okay, the sigmoid colon then passes the feces at this point into the rectum, straight up and down rectum or rectus, right here. A couple more structures about the large intestine and the intestines in general before I end this video. We can see that in the large intestine there are these little bumps. Okay, these bumps are called haustra. We can also see that there is a white line. This is called the teniae coli, so essentially the tendon of the colon, and this helps to essentially move along via peristalsis and segmentation the much thicker, more solid feces. All right, remember that chyme is pretty much liquid in the small intestine, so it's a lot easier to move along, but in the large intestine we get this reabsorption of a lot of water, this dehydration of the feces, and so it's a lot more difficult to move feces along than it is pure chyme. And so that's why we need a little bit of extra strength, a little more structures in the large intestine than we do in the small intestine. Okay, one more thing I want to point out. This is the posterior side of the intestines. Okay, and what we can see here, of course, is the large intestine, we can see the small intestines, and we can see this double-layered membrane of peritoneum. We can see that there are blue and purple vessels. We can also see that there are little green dots. These are called the mesenteries. Okay, so a double layer of peritoneum through which our blood vessels, our nerves, and our lymphatic structures can pass to and from the intestines. Okay, so green on this particular model is always indicating lymphatic, and so this is showing us how very important it is to make sure that no invaders that we took into our body via our meal can actually pass over that membrane and get into our blood. We want to make sure that we have this barrier, this fail-safe, so that if anything does get over that membrane, we can catch it before it gets into our blood. Okay, and that is the end of these structures on this model.